I'm going to show you exactly how to book 5 to 10 high ticket sales calls with cold email every single week so that you can inject cash flow into your business very quickly. Whether you are experienced with cold outreach and or cold email, or you are adding it as a new lead generation pipeline for your business, this applies to you. For context, my name is Pablo. I'm the founder of Vintascale, a B2B lead generation agency. We send anywhere between 20 to 40,000 cold emails every single month for ourselves and our clients, and we generate multiple six figures in pipeline every single month for ourselves and our clients. Without further ado, let's dive straight in. So one of the first things you need to know, and one of the things that I love about cold email as a mechanism to generate leads for any business, is how linear it is. What I love about it is the fact that you can essentially predict before going into launching any sort of campaign, how many emails you need to send in order to close a certain amount of meetings, and based on your close rate, in order to generate a certain amount of revenue for your business. Whereas with ads, it can be a bit backwards. You have to test a bunch of creatives. You do have to test a bunch of cold emails as well to get the right campaign and crack it. However, it's a lot easier to predict off the bat just because of its linear nature. So this is a tool that I use and that I bring up in consultations a lot with people who are thinking about using cold email and integrating it into their business, or if we are auditing any sort of campaigns. Here's the magic about cold email. So you can essentially, again, forecast this stuff. So if you look at the bottom, the key performance metric, here is the number of expected meetings that you are going to close for your business every single month. And you can do the backwards math, right? So if you are reaching out to 1,000 people, essentially everybody, we recommend 2-step email sequences for every lead, every contact you reach out to. So essentially you're going to double this. So just for example, if you reach out to 5,000 people, you are essentially sending out 10,000 emails, right? If you have a 1% reply rate, which is decent, you can scale things with that, and you get a 20% positive reply rate, which is what we like to aim for. Of course, all of this changes depending on the offer, the industry, the type of business, so on and so forth. There are nuances, right? Depending on the industry and niche that you operate in. If you book, let's just say 30%, right? Which is more so on the low end, but 30% of all of the interested responses, you actually convert them into meetings. And then you have a very healthy 20% close rate. Out of 10,000 emails, you can expect to close 1.4 meetings. Let's just round that down to 1. If you have an average ticket price of, let's say, $10,000 or $20,000, well, off of 10,000 emails, which may cost you who knows how much, nothing crazy expensive to send, you made $10,000 or $20,000 in revenue, and you can predict this. So we know that if we want to close one meeting this month, well, then we're going to have to send at least 10,000 emails in order to generate that amount of revenue and inject that much in pipeline and cash flow for our business. So if we wanted to send, and you can do this math backwards as well, right? But and of course, all this improves when you increase things like your meeting conversion rate, if you increase things like your reply rate, your positive reply rate, so on and so forth. And so we optimize this as time goes on, but just at the very forefront, prior to launching any campaign, again, you can pretty much accurately predict any sort of revenue or how many emails you need to send. So again, if you want to reach out to 20,000 people, you send 40,000 emails, which is quite common. And then you look at this 5.7 meetings, we can round this down to 5 at an average ticket price of, let's say, $10,000 or $20,000, which again is very common in the industries that we serve. You're at least looking at $100,000 in revenue, in cash collected and deals closed, right? And we can say anywhere between 5 to 10 times that, but speaking conservatively, in terms of cash flow and deals inserted into the pipeline. So that is what I like about cold email. The first thing is that it's very linear and that you can do the backwards math. And we always go with the most conservative estimate when I am running through this with potential clients in our consultations. The next thing is, in the same breath, one thing to note about booking meetings with cold email, if you want to be booking between 5 to 10 sales calls a week, clearly a lot of this is about volume. Whereas things like running ads, nothing is more important than the creative. Nothing trumps the creative. And then you have things like targeting and things like that. But with cold email, it's volume. Volume and offer right next to each other. But once you have the offer dialed in, with ads, it's all about the creative. With cold email, it is about volume, right? And so there are a couple of things that are important within that point. First thing is making sure that your total addressable market is big enough, right? And that is a problem that I see with a lot of folks who I get on calls with, where their offer is very niche or their industry is very niche. Let's say they, things like vet tech, right? Or legal tech or things like that, where there are only so many firms that we can reach out to. You are going to run out of people to reach out to very, very, very quickly, especially if you're only targeting high level decision makers. So you need to, like, for cold email to work, you need to make sure that your total addressable market is big enough, because we like to start at a minimum of 1,000 emails per day for everybody that we work with. Even better if we can get closer to 10,000, but your total addressable market needs to be big enough. And then if it's not big enough, well, then you need to have plans and tactics as to how you're going to scale outside of that industry. Perhaps you scale geographically, perhaps you broaden the niche, perhaps you broaden the company size. But long story short, these are the things that you need to think about, because at the end of the day, you need to optimize for volume. So here's a quick pipeline that we built for a client. And as you can see, the very first thing we think about is volume. We think about how many leads can we get per day? We think about how many contacts do we start with versus how many do we end with once we've verified and cleaned out the list, right? We think about things like this. Where can we get the most leads? Why? Because we are always maximizing for volume. We design the entire pipeline with cold email so that we can get you sending the most amount of emails possible. Next thing is, and this is where a lot of people mess up. And you can spot the difference between an agency that is more experienced and an agency that doesn't really know what they're doing, or a lone wolf who doesn't know what they're doing. Is let's say you crack the code to figuring out how to send a lot of emails in a very short amount of time, end to end. You can get to that cycle very quickly. It doesn't take you hours to go from finding a contact to actually readying up an email. Let's say you can do that very quickly. A lot of times where people go wrong is they pump out a ton of emails, but they have a very difficult time balancing volume with the personalization needed to actually get responses, right? They have a difficulty balancing volume with keeping things relevant. And that is where we have a huge competitive advantage over a lot of other agencies, is our ability to keep things relevant while sending a high amount of emails, because of our ability to use AI, the tactics and ways in which we use AI. And I've published several videos giving you a inside look on how we do things, the things we think about, but just personalizing these emails, right? In a ton of different ways, so that at scale, these emails are still relevant. That way your volume doesn't go to waste. You're not burning your inboxes. You're not burning resources. You're not burning money. And at the end of the day, the whole reason why we use cold email is to inject pipeline quickly into a business and cash flow quickly into a business. But that means nothing if you are wasting your resources. You're just ending up in spam, burning your inboxes, so on and so forth. So these are things we think about, things we like to educate our clients on. And that is how you book 5 to 10 meetings a week with cold email. You just do the backwards math, right? So here you can see 24 meetings booked. If you want to book about 24 meetings based on this reply rate and based on this positive reply rate, right? And this is, what is it? 7, 14, 21. This is 6 meetings a week. This is 6 meetings a week, exactly like we talked about. Well, then you're going to need to send this amount of emails, which is not that much. When you zoom out and keep things into perspective, this is very doable, very easy, very possible for us. Again, our competitive advantage is the fact that we can scale up very quickly the pure amount of emails we can send, but also while maintaining relevancy to everybody that we reach out to. So I hope that answers any sort of questions you may have. If you still have any questions remaining, please leave a comment. Other than that, if you run a B2B business doing north of $20,000 a month in monthly recurring revenue, and you would like us to audit your cold email campaigns or get you clients from cold traffic with cold email and leads from cold email, click the link below and schedule a consultation with myself, and we can walk through the math to see if that makes sense for you. If you would like this framework as a freebie that walks you exactly through everything you need to know to run a successful cold email campaign and essentially print money with it, and book 5 to 10 high ticket sales calls a week with cold email, even if nobody knows you, I will give this completely free for you. The link is in the description below. See you guys in the next video. I'm out. Peace.